Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. My favorite day of the week, Friday mornings. I get to meet with extraordinary guests as we unpack the topic of certainty in our lives and in our businesses. I have the unique opportunity today to meet with one of my oldest friends. I think I've known you longer than just about anybody, Mark, except for maybe my parents. And very excited to have you on here. We've got a great story to tell, part of our history and yours and how we work together and what you and we together are doing to bless the lives of business owners, to create more certainty for them, right, across the country. So we're meeting with Mark Barrick. He's the founder of Nuquil Group. And as I said, very old friend of mine. I think we've known each other for 30 plus years now, Mark. Is that right?
Yeah, about 30 plus years, 32, I think, 32 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's hard to believe we're that old, right, Mark?
I don't feel that old.
So I always start out the show with sharing a couple of reasons why I've invited this specific guest. It's not just because we're old friends, have known each other for a long time, been through a lot together, but really it comes down to the fact that Mark is an example of someone who saw an enormous need and filled it. That's something a lot of entrepreneurs do. They see a way that they can fill a gap, right? Fill a need, create a solution to a problem. And that's exactly what Mark and his co-founders and his team did and have done over the last 10 plus years. Secondly, Mark is a fantastic example of what we do at the Certainty Collective, how we help our clients without requiring any upfront cost. I mean, this is music to most business owners' ears, right? If there's zero upfront and zero out of pocket, and they receive an enormous reward, enormous benefits, that's pretty much the perfect scenario in our experience. And so we're going to break down what I mean by both of these. And Mark, thanks for being here with us this morning on Finding Certainty.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Patrick.
So going back a little bit, I usually ask the guests to go back in time a little bit and tell their story, how they got started and where they come from, what brought them to where they are today. I'm going to actually break with tradition a little bit and tell some of the story myself since I was there, right? When I first met Mark, he was slinging fax machines door to door in Anchorage, Alaska. I still have images of you bundled up with the snow blowing with a fax machine under your arm and sharing this technology that was in many respects new to a lot of people, right? And Mark, so you know, as the founder of Nuquil Group, he started in business equipment has been working in that arena ever since. He went from fax machines to printers and copiers and scanners, and he's gone through the paperless craze, et cetera, et cetera. But about 10 years ago, it's a little bit over 10 now, right, Mark? What are we at?
12 years, just 12 years in May.
It's crazy. It seems like just yesterday when he decided to switch sides, as it were. He saw that there was a need in the industry, that there was no one out there representing the customer's best interests. Everyone is trying to sell them product and service at as high a margin as possible, and they do a really good job at it, right? This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Mark and his partners said, there's a need here. There's a need for someone who's sitting on the customer side of the desk, representing their best interests, advocating for them, and as it were, drawing back the curtain on this enormous industry that is, it's unique in many respects. It's not only is it gigantic, not only does everyone use printers and copiers, even if they say they're going paperless, they're still scanning, they're still emailing, they're still doing all these things. But it's an industry with few, if any, checks or balances. It's an unregulated industry. And as a result, most customers are paying significantly more than they have to. Well, Mark, in his wisdom, as it were, and I think a big part is your heart. You said, this is just isn't right. There's a need here. There's a way for us to help customers secure better pricing and better terms, help them understand the industry better, and help them have an expert guiding them through that path. And so, Mark,
let me address
anything you want to add to that. Go for it.
Yeah, let me address that. So, as Patrick mentioned, it was about 1990 when I started in this industry with fax machines, as Patrick suggested, and I was actually working for Xerox manufacturer, Xerox Direct, right, which is the manufacturer. And that was back in the time when there were fax machines, there were standalone printers, standalone fax machines, standalone scanners, and of course, copiers, right? Standalone copiers. We hadn't gotten into the digital networking and everything else that came later. And so I started out by selling the fax machines in Anchorage, Alaska, and in small copiers. And then ultimately, as things continue to grow, we started moving to larger ones. The one thing that was always near and dear to my heart was saving clients money. And so anytime I could find a way to, you would get a cost of goods from Xerox, then you'd have to go sell that product. And I'd always try and find, like, how can we get better pricing from, for these Xerox fax machines and this and that and the other. And I would learn that there's a rep's cost of goods, there's a manager's cost of goods, and then there's an executive cost of goods. And then sometimes these people, clients would have buying groups that they would buy from, and so those sorts of things happened. After about 3-4 years of doing that, I moved into full line of equipment, and copiers were going through a digital transformation. So copying, scanning, faxing, printing was all kind of coming together, and over the next 10 years would be, right? So that now today, we just have a digital MFP, as many people recognize it, digital copier, printer, scanner, fax. And it used to be that in our world, 90% of everything done on a copier was copying, and then maybe 10% was faxing, or 10% was scanning, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting transformation that we've gotten to now in 2024 is that really about 80% of what's used on a copier now is printing. So people will print from their desk, from their PC or their Mac, and they'll go pick up the device or their output, their pages. The other 20% now is scanning, copying, and faxing. Faxing is really only used about maybe 1%. And so realistically, the majority of it is scanning, and then I would say some copying. So that's how the digital space has evolved. And how I evolved as a rep is I moved from working for Xerox, and I switched gears and went to work for a company called Icon Office Solutions. That was in about 1998. And Icon Office Solutions was offering a different product line and actually had significant values that they could offer. Some of their equipment was less expensive than what Xerox was offering. That's what I was finding. And as a desire to continue to get customers the best, I made that switch. Interestingly enough, within about a year of making that switch, Xerox came to me and suggested that I had a non-compete and that I couldn't sell solutions in the Alaska marketplace any longer. So being respectful of that, I moved down to the lower 48, to the States, and started working in the Salt Lake, Utah area. Did that for a number of...
So Mark, let me interject then. I know you went to Oregon at one point. Was it between those two, or was it... Where did Medford fit into the mix? I remember when you left, I was depressed that you were leaving, but I distinctly remember you leaving and going Oregon somewhere along that journey.
Yeah, we spent about 9 months in between Anchorage and Salt Lake. So they were preparing the position for me in Salt Lake, gotcha. and it wasn't quite there yet. So we moved to Medford, Oregon. I did live in Southern Oregon. Medford's right there on the Rogue River, the Rogue Valley. And beautiful that was a fantastic place to live. But it was a pit stop, if you will, until we could get to Salt Lake and start the position that we were really after. Gotcha. And so then when we get to Salt Lake, we started working for Icon Office Solutions there. And originally I was what they call a competitive, major account competitive rep. So They had handed me 30 accounts that Icon had never been able to break into. And these were largely Xerox Stronghold accounts. And over the course of about 2 years, I broke into about 18 of the 25 where they started doing business with Icon Office Solutions. And once again, the reason was because of the value that I was giving to the client, right? Making sure attention to detail, making sure customer service was being handled, fixing of the devices, just anything that a client needed. They knew that they could come to me, and I really cared about the business, not just about profitability that you could make. Although I did find a lot of things that happened, Patrick, throughout that time, and we've had a discussion about this before. In the copy print industry, as you mentioned, there's nobody there's no big brother, there's no overview, there's nobody watching, or governing what's happening in our industry. And so copiers and printers in general tend to be a high margin, low visibility or low transparency. So you have a lot of gimmicks, a lot of mines, I call them landmines in contracts, where a lot of gotchas that are out there. And that's one of the reasons why after spending 20 years in the copier printer industry, in 2012, we founded, or I co-founded Nuquo, and now I'm the co-founder / president of Nuquo. Our goal of starting Nuquo was to, as Patrick suggested earlier, was to really kind of create some transparency and some visibility in an industry that wasn't happening in. In fact, just to give you an example, before I turn it back over to Patrick, we just were talking to a Fortune 500 company, and because of a non-disclosure agreement, I can't really say which one it is, but we had a Fortune 500 company, and they have about 12,000 assets, copiers and printers. And recently, they came to us and they said, "We understand that your organization helps clients reduce their costs on their contracts," and we said that is correct. And they said that they happen to be with Xerox. And so we signed this non-disclosure agreement so that we could look at their contracts, so they could send us copies of the contracts, we could look at them. And the gentleman that I was speaking with had been in the purchasing industry for 26 years. And he had been negotiating these specific copier contracts with Xerox for 16 of those 28 years. And so he knew he had a very, very good contract. And he came to Nuquo and he said, "I've heard all these things about how Nuquo can do this and leverage that, and how you guys have all these different things. So I thought I would give you an opportunity to share with me what you could do." So he gave us a copy of all his contracts. We took about 2 weeks to review those contracts, look at all the information. And Nuquo runs a lot of RFPs ongoing all the time throughout the country for very large organizations, Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, everything. We generally have anywhere from 10 to 12 RFPs that are running at all times. And in this specific situation, we pulled 3 Xerox RFPs that we just recently had pricing on, and we used those as comparables for this gentleman's review, so that we had documents that we could actually show that this came where it came from, facts, right? Not just myths. And interestingly enough, we sat down with this gentleman who's a Fortune 500 that has 12,000 assets. And interestingly enough, he said to us, we started the call and we said, "Well, what do you think our cost save is going to be?" He said, "Because I've been negotiating these things for so long, maybe 6%, 8%, somewhere in that realm." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "A lot of people think that." I said, "We had actually worked with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines as well. They didn't think, in fact, their vendor told them that they had the absolute best contract they've ever seen, and we couldn't improve that one at all, and we improved it by $6 million. So when we came to this gentleman of the Fortune 500 company, we started showing him what his maintenance was. We started showing him what his leases were. We started showing him what his utilization was. And when I say utilization, he had a lot of 50 and 60 and 80 page per minute copiers that were only running about 5,000 pages per month. And it was way overkill. A 60, 80 page per minute copier is supposed to do about 2.5 million pages. And in this situation, they were only running 5,000 pages per month with a life expectancy of, in our industry of, maybe 7 years. They were going to do a fraction, right? Only 15% of the usage on that actual asset. And so when all was said and done, we came back to him and we showed him how he could save approximately 41% on his contracts. And he was blown away. He was blown away. He said 41%. He said, I got to stop you right here. I expected 6%, 8%, something like that. And I was just going to tell you guys just to go pound sand, right? Literally, that's what he said. I was going to go tell you to go pound sand because we're already doing everything we need to do. He said 40%. He said, I just got to ask you, how do you do it? I said, we have the client sign a contract, a statement of work, right? And then we show them how we do it because we don't talk about it. We do a lot of different things, right? But we have a lot of intellectual property. And some of the things we look at are things like the type of contract that you've negotiated, the service type, pricing, the utilization, the terms and conditions, all those different things. And so realistically, we have about 200 steps in every contract that we've actually devised, that we follow, and that we fulfill. And when we do all those things, that's what gets us to that situation. So since we're coming up on a break, Patrick, any other questions you want to interject before we get there?
A comment more than a question. We get asked this all the time, right? How do you do it? How is it possible? Because the biggest objection we run into is, one, nailing a C-suite down long enough to listen, right? To actually take a serious look at it. And two, there's skepticism that we can actually do what we claim to do. And I know for a fact we average 32% net. I think it's even rising as we
on the Nuco side, correct?
As we do more. But we always just say this. We say we know what to look for, what to take out, what to change, what to add in, what to omit. We know who to talk to and how to talk to them. I love the phrase that they know that we know what they know. And they don't play games, right? When we come back from the break, I want to talk about negotiation and how it's really not a negotiation, right? And then lastly, the collective footprint of all of our clients. It doesn't matter how big that new customer is. They plus all of our customers will always be bigger. And so it's knowing what to change, who to go to, having that bigger footprint, right? That collective buying power. We'll break down after the break what we mean by that and go into maybe some additional examples. I want to share my story, Mark, about why I came to work with you because it's a little bit unique, a little bit of funny twist there. But we're visiting with Mark Barrick. He's the owner, the co-founder, now the sole owner. I know you've bought out your partners recently.
Correct.
A couple retired, a couple were bought out. But the long and the short of it is we go way back. And Mark is providing a service that every business needs. And that is truly remarkable. Customers are, as he put it, blown away by what they see. So don't go away. We'll be right back and share with you a little bit more insight into how you too can have more certainty in this area of your business or in that of friends and colleagues, others that you know who should know that this exists. We find many times customers say, why didn't I know this is an option? Right? They're so excited to hear about it. And that's our biggest job, is getting the word out. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Mark Barrick. Thank you.
Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, Team, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. I'm glad you're with us this morning. As I said, I look forward every week to Friday morning. Doesn't matter what's going on. I know at the end of the week, I'm going to have a great conversation with somebody. We're going to dissect this topic of certainty, which is so dear to my heart. And I've really been enjoying this experience. Coming up on 2 years now as a radio host on Voice America. And, I started the first of the year with a different approach. On the first Friday of every month, I actually do a monologue rather than a guest interview. And I'm going through the alphabet. I had A for accountability, B for balance, C for composure. Let's see, D for discipline, E for endurance. Last month we did faith. Don't know what I'm going to do for G yet. I'm still deciding. But as I look back on all the experiences that I have, and that's what I share during these monologues, I have so many memories and lessons that I've experienced and learned working with Mark Barrick. He and I have a lot in common. We're both veterans. He was in the Marine Corps. I was in the Army. We lived in Alaska. We love the outdoors. We love business and sales and serving customers. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me about Mark was how much he cared about his customers, right? This industry, the print copy industry, does have a bit of a reputation of high margins and lack of transparency, and it's kind of not what you know, but who you know, and some of these more negative aspects. But Mark, I think, has always done well in that industry because he put his customers first. He sold them at reasonable and fair margins. He looked for problems that he could solve for them. That became an easy transition, in my opinion, into literally switching sides and truly serving them, not selling them, but serving them, helping them pay less rather than buy more. I think it says a lot about you, Mark, and I think it's just a fulfillment of who you are, how you always have been as a salesperson. You stood out as a professional in that arena because the customers knew that you were different. And I know you're a little bit different in a lot of ways, but I'm just kidding. But I really think they sensed that. Once they got to know you, they saw that it was different. They saw that experience was different, and they didn't mind paying a fair price and a good price. But then when he transitioned into Nuclear, this is where I was saying a little bit of my story. Mark tried to recruit me for several years to come sell printers and copiers, and I'd see him working at 2 a.m, preparing this complicated bid for a customer, and knowing he was going to go up with 5 against maybe half a dozen other competitors. And I just thought, man, that's too much work. I said, I always admired it. I just didn't know that I wanted to do it. But when he came to me and said, we're starting a new company, and this is what we're doing. We're helping our customers to pay less rather than buy more. We're helping them to have an expert in their corner. That caught my attention. That's what really stood out. It was the heart of it, right? The service of it. I believe, and I know you agree with this, Mark, is that if you do what's right first, you put your customers first, you try to serve them first, the income side will always follow, right? It's paying it forward. It always comes back tenfold. And Nuclear is a great example of that. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Patrick. In fact, I'll just add one thing, right? And this is what I often tell a lot of clients. One of the smartest ways to achieve financial health is to save money on what you're already spending. And realistically, anybody that's owned a business understands that you've got, a cost of that business, right? What does it cost you to get that business? if you can go, save money that you're already spending, that's 100% back to your bottom line, right? So just thought I'd throw that in.
No, that's right. My very first job, and initially I went to work for Mark as their VP of sales in the Northwest region. Now we represent them as an independent contractor through Certainty. But my very first job, to your point, Mark, the CEO pulled me aside afterwards. We just saved him $500,000 net, even after our fee. And he said, I don't think you realize, Patrick, how big $500,000 on our bottom line is. He said, at 5% profit, that's like $10 million, right? If we do 10% profit for the year, which is a goal of ours, that's like $5 million in new sales that I didn't have to deal with, install, implement, provide customer service for, or pay commissions on. So we talk all the time about net profits and how what we do through Nuquo and through other services are direct to their bottom line. Those are found dollars that were not in their budget yesterday, and today they are. I wanted to go back just one more quick glimpse at the history, Mark. Can you talk about the transition from working as an enterprise salesperson, a manager, then eventually a dealer, and then making that transition? Because I know you interviewed some of your clients and asked them, what do you think? And how should we get paid for this? I think that's an interesting insight to the story.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is, Patrick. As you know, when I was selling, my goal was that I would have a low margin, so that the reason I never lost an account, right, is just because no other competitor wanted to come in and make almost no money, to go steal that account from me, right? So I kind of factored and learned early on that, if you've got a really low margin in there, nobody's going to touch your business because, now you don't make as much money as a rep, right? But volume is how you make money, right? So if you sell a lot of clients with a low profit margin. So when I came to the idea, these are things that I had already been doing for my client base, right, in Utah. And my clients loved that. And so I went to them and I said, hey, I have this idea. What if I open this up? I can only get to a small segment of the market here in Salt Lake, right? And so, I'm helping customers one customer at a time, but I can only get to a small segment of them. And truthfully, there's not much transparency in the industry. And so a lot of people were spinning yarns, right? Or little, white lies about, oh yeah, we do this too, and we do this too, and we do this too. And so how do you create an established credibility? Well, only if that CEO or that owner or that executive talked to one of your other clients, right? And it's hard to get people to talk to people these days because of just the business nature we're in. But as it translates, so I went to those clients and I asked them, I said, what if I was to start a consulting firm? I had heard that there were a lot of other consulting firms that did, asset recovery. They did savings off of taxes, shipping savings, lots of different, angles, right? And sure. I said, what if we could do something with copiers and printers where I could actually become a consultant and represent your firm, and I'll be an extension of your staff. I'll be on your side of the table, right? And I'll help you negotiate. What do you think about that? And every single person I talked to, every current client said, I'll sign up and be your first client, right? I mean, literally, because they all wanted to have me on their side, helping them negotiate these things. And I said, okay, so how would I get paid, right, to do that? I mean, what's the best way for me to do that? And so every one of these clients, unanimously, there were about 12 that I spoke with. They all came back and said, we kind of created a think tank, if you will. And they came back and said, cost save. If you create cost save and you take a percentage of the cost save, a small percentage of the cost save, that's the best way for you to be able to do this. Now, the question is, can you make enough money on that cost save to run a business, right? And that's what we didn't really know, right? And so after we started running some, even with some of our current clients, we started running some analysis to determine what kind of cost save could we create. Well, I knew that in many cases, and this is kind of crazy, it's going to sound crazy, but in many cases, copier companies will charge 80%, 90%, 100% of MSRP, right? In profitability, right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
I always sold at about 15 to 20% margin, right? 15 to 20% margin because, that allowed me to make enough money for myself, right, to cover my costs, and it gave the clients a great price. But yet, if somebody wanted to come in and try and cut that cost, they're only making 5-10 points, right? And they couldn't survive on that. So that's kind of the way I did things. Well, then as I started uncovering, that my bosses were packing equipment and packing lease rates and everything else, right? There was all this uncertainty, which is one of the reasons why you call yourself certainty management, right? Because you create certainty. So we found that there's all this uncertainty, and once we started disclosing that and finding out, running the analysis, we thought, gosh, we're typically, when we go into a customer that's paying 200%, 300% over what they should be paying, there's a huge, cost save to that, right? So realistically, we start telling people that we could probably save them between 30 to 60%, gross profit, right, on, gross on their contracts. Well, interestingly enough, that's netted out to 32% net cost save is what Nuquo is providing for people. So we actually got the model of cost save directly from the clients that gave us the idea that this is the direction we should go.
Well, and it's interesting because we talk all the time about how we have no competition, right? It's not to say there aren't companies that look at print copy costs, but usually the extent of their recommendations are, you should print less color, and I've got a vendor over here I've negotiated a better price with. That's not what Nuquo does, right? Nuquo is 100% vendor impartial, or vendor agnostic, as we say. We don't represent the vendors, any of them. We work with over 400 manufacturers and dealers and others across the country and around the world, but we don't work for any of them. In fact, that first dinner or that first meeting I said, where the CEO said, you saved me $500,000, you don't know how big it is. Interesting point. The manager of the copier company was also at that closing meeting, and he asked me if I could go to lunch. He said he wanted to take me to lunch and talk about what we did. He actually talked about coming to work for us. He said three things that I think are interesting. One, he said, I have no idea how you qualified for the pricing you did. He said, I've never seen such good pricing. And I already explained the reasons why, right? Our footprint and other things. But he said, I also thought you were going to be really difficult to work with. This is the first time I've worked with you guys. I thought you guys were going to be just, cut me off at the knees and be adversarial and so forth and so on. He said, it wasn't at all like that. He goes, you guys have been great. And he said, lastly, he goes, I'd really like to take you to lunch and see if I can get more business. And I told him that we don't do that. We said, we don't go to lunch. We don't go play golf. We don't create those alliances in that conflict of interest, right? And he understood. And but I think it's an important point that you maybe touch on, Mark, this whole thing about how he felt like we weren't adversarial. We were easy to work with. He was charging a customer $20,000 a month, and we reduced that to $8,000, literally $12,000, 60% savings. Over 60 months, it was $750,000. And he was thanking me for helping him. He literally thanked me for helping him save the account. He said, you guys were great to work with. Can we do more business together? Can you comment on that? Because I think it's a really interesting insight.
Yeah. That it's a great point that you make, Patrick. At the end of the day, there's owners that are out there and they own businesses. They can't micromanage what every single one of their reps do, right? So sometimes the rep will go out there, he's got a comp plan, right? Go sell this and make this, and he's got a family support or this or the other. So he finds a customer that he could take advantage of, and he goes out and takes advantage of them in that situation. And the owner may not even know that, that he's taking advantage of them that way, right? Or he maybe sees it after the fact, but how do you go back and tell him that he has to change the deal that he just wrote because, he's overcharging the client, right? So we've always said in our industry that we don't want to be adversarial. We actually call all of the vendors vendor partners. And the reason they're vendor partners is because they have their necessity, to the lifeblood of what we do. They actually provide a service, and many of them provide an excellent service to clients. We just want to help them establish a fair price to those clients, right? And we want to make sure that we're using all of our knowledge, right, and all of our gimmicks, if you will, to get that best price possible, so that our clients, get the the best solution. They get a great servicing company and they get a great price. And what's really unique about that, Patrick, is that realistically, probably 80% of our clients, they don't move on. Once they establish, a vendor, they stay with that vendor. We have now clients that are coming up on their third contract renewal, and they're still doing the contract renewals with that same company because everything's perfect, right? The pricing is right, the service is good, and everybody's transparent, right? And we're keeping it that way because we continue to do customer reviews and this and that and the other. So we actually had worked with over 400 dealerships across the nation, and every manufacturer, specifically that's out there. And realistically, with all of them, our goal is not to try and put them out of business. It's to try and create the best scenario where a client can get excellent service and a really good price without putting the vendor out of business, right? Because that's not the goal. And so when we established that, and when vendors started understanding that, then they started coming back and saying, how can we do more with you? We like this idea that we're going to keep a customer for life and that we're just going to have a fair price that we give to them one time, right? And then we just continue to roll it forward. So that's actually how we came to that conclusion.
Yeah, I think it's a topic we should unpack a little bit more, maybe after the break here, because I've got a couple of insights to this that have been really revealing for me. But, ultimately it comes down to that, just as you said, putting them out of business doesn't serve anyone, right? We need the vendors. We need them to do good work, and we need them to be a vendor partner. We need them to have an amicable and a mutually beneficial relationship with us and with the clients. But it needs to be truly win-win-win, right? We're not out to damage any of those relationships. We're not out to put them out of business. It's good business to make margin. You're in business to make a good margin, but we believe that margin needs to be reasonable, right? And the customers most certainly want to pay as good a price as they can. All we're bringing with NewQuo into the picture is equity. We're bringing in this equanimity, right? The ability for everyone to do business and do it well, but no one to be taken advantage of, no one to have the upper hand. I love the fact that when you talk to those vendors, Mark, they know that you know what they know, as I said earlier, and they know they know they can't play games with you, right? It's not even a negotiation, and I want to talk about that when we come back from break, because it's when I first started in this industry with you, I thought we're negotiating with them for a better price. It's really not even that, right? It's almost it's staggering how that conversation is so not just transparent, but so revealing and so balanced, I guess is a good word for it. But anyway, we'll come right back. We're visiting with Mark Barrick, founder and president of NewQuo Group. Really enjoying the conversation, my friend. Don't go away.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, T-E-A-M, like Mary.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, T-E-A-M, like Mary.com.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. We're with Mark Barrick, a longtime friend of mine and the founder and president of Nuquo Group. We were talking before the break about the benefits of having an industry expert on your side who can have a conversation with a vendor that is 100% transparent. It's not just transparent, it's equal, right? It's balanced. My first question when I came to work with Mark is am I going to come outside and see my tires slashed by some disgruntled printer or copier rep, right? And he said that's not the case at all. He said we have a great relationship with these vendors. They know that we know what they know. They want to work with us. They want access to these jobs. They want to save the clients that they are already working with, where we're brought into the picture. I do think they're a little bit disconcerted when they see that Nuquo's in the picture. I could just picture them go, oh crap, right? Nuquo again, right? Because they know they're going to have to give up margin, right? But the vendors understand they'd rather keep a job at a smaller margin and keep it forever than have to give it up and start all over, right? There's incentives, there's bonuses, there's other things that apply with longevity. To the example we shared earlier, the manager of that company, he said he actually thanked me for helping him save this account. We chopped by 60%. I mean, that was my very first deal that we did with Nuquo, and I was blown away by that. I mean, I was the one blown away, right? But I think it's worth mentioning, Mark, the fact that this is not really a negotiation, right? I always find it comical when a new vendor comes along who hasn't worked with you before, and they think that they can give you a price and tell you it's the best price and that you'll run with it, right? It takes them about 2 minutes to realize that's not going to work. Could you explain why that is? I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Patrick. It's funny. We know more than the vendors know, right? And we know more than the vendors' reps know. And we know this because A, we've been in the business 30 years. Personally, I've been in the business over 30 years. And B, I've run over 1,000 RFPs, right? I have close to 1,000 clients, and I've run over 1,000 RFPs, right? And as I mentioned, at all times, right? And every single month, we're running 10 to 12 RFPs. That's 120 RFPs a year, technically. Mm-hmm. And we're always seeing from California to New York, and now even worldwide, right? Because now we have clients that are even worldwide clients, global clients. And so we're always seeing pricing come from every single vendor. We're seeing the trends, we're seeing the pricing, we're seeing what's good, what's not good. And so when somebody throws a price at us, we can tell you exactly how that price stacks up. And so when people ask me, well, how do you know, if I've got a good price? It's not because, Patrick or Mark said so. It's because we have, 30 RFPs in the last 2 or 3 months that we can take every one of those vendor proposals and show you how your information stacks up next to those, right? And so it takes out the guesswork. In fact, we don't guess at all. Everything that we do is based on, factual, results.
Well, it is. I was impressed when I first started working with you, how data-driven it all is. It's not just negotiating a better price. You're looking at, as you said, utilization. You're looking at their terms and conditions. I mean, I know the contracts are pretty clean now. You're not having to do as much change. But I remember when we first started, you were striking out 80% of the fine print on the back of the contracts because it was not to their benefit, right? Most of those contracts are weighted the direction of the vendors. Not to say that they're taking advantage of the clients. They just have their best interests at heart. The provider, the manufacturer's best interests at heart, and that's how the contracts were written. And I think it's an important point to mention. I know you would agree with this, Mark, that we don't want to make it sound like these companies are out to just screw their customers, right? They're not. They're not just taking advantage of them. As I said before, it is good business to try to make a good margin on your business. I just love the fact how Nuquo is making it a little more honest, a little more transparent, maybe a lot more, right? You're making the pricing more equitable. There's more, I think more just, I say equity, but I think more, there's more balance in how you do business with the vendors, with the clients, and with yourselves. And as a result, everybody's winning. It's not just these billion-dollar corporations, most of whom are overseas, that are winning big and everyone else isn't. Now, it's like the pie is split in 3 equal pieces, right? And it still baffles my brain when I see vendors who, like that first job I talked about, the customer stayed with their incumbent. They didn't go to a different vendor, right? We saved them 60%, but they still decided to stay with that same provider. I thought, well, they would have been upset and said, well, screw you, I'm going to go somewhere else, right? But they didn't do that. They said, no, we like these guys. If we can get a better price with them, we know the equipment, we're familiar with it, people don't like change. They were happy to stay with them, but they were also ecstatic to get the pricing and the terms that they did. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, and that just goes back to, when we started working, we started with small mom and pops, right? Small businesses, because we weren't sure, when you get to these big corporate clients, right? Or these big corporate companies, that have their own purchasing teams, their own legal teams, and a lot of experience in negotiating contracts, what do they know versus what do you know? And so we kind of started down this road of calling on small businesses and helping them and finding better, price solutions for their organizations. And then we actually went to a scenario where we went to mid-sized companies, and then we went to our first publicly traded company. And interestingly enough, now we do business with all sorts of companies, companies that are Fortune 500, like Royal Caribbean Group, et cetera, right? And people with hundreds of copiers and thousands of printers. And at the end of the day, we're still ending up saving them, a very, very large percentage, right? 32% is our average net cost save to a client. But, another thing that's unique, Patrick, that I've never, ever seen in another business model is we live in a world of information, right? And sometimes it's difficult to get people to give you references, client studies, case studies, things like that. We actually have those, okay, because we've actually had some clients have moved forward, and so we've got some things out there on YouTube, et cetera, that people can go look at some of our references. But the one unique thing is this: Nuquo has 100% success rate in 12 years. We have never handled a customer's organization and not be able to create a cost save for that organization, number one, which is impressive. Number two, we have no negative reviews. In a day and age where somebody gets burnt or somebody has this or somebody gets, that, right? And they go out and they write a nasty review on you. Go out and find I challenge you, go out and find anything on the internet anywhere, right? There's no negative reviews, because at the end of the day, everything the Nuquo does is to help the company improve their situation, and we have 100% success rate in doing so. Now, we do have some clients that didn't do business with us a second or third go around because they said, hey, we learned everything we need from you. We know what the pricing looks like, right? And, we feel like we can negotiate on our own now. Perfectly fine, right? We're perfectly fine with that. But we have a lot of clients that, want to stay and have us involved because they don't want to have to worry about, looking over their shoulder and seeing if somebody pulled the wool over their eyes. And so, probably 70, 80% of our clients stay with us for for life, so to speak.
Well, and I know it happens that there are those who say, well, we're going to go do this on our own. And then a little while later, they come back to you and say, you know what, actually, this is way too much work. We want you to handle it for us. Because isn't it true that the feedback we hear from customers is oftentimes the price savings is one thing, but the time savings to them is maybe even a bigger benefit to them. I mean, again, we can't mention the name because we're under NDA, but we're working with a very large organizations in every major city in America, and they themselves said, this is not our expertise. This is not what we do. We haven't spent the 30 years in this industry you have. We might have really sharp people, really great purchasers. We might be good negotiators, But number one, we don't have your expertise, your insights. We do a contract once every 5 or 6 years, 4 or 5 years. We don't do one every week. We don't do dozens every month. And so they understand that, but they also love the fact that you do all the legwork. Once they sign that contract, they get you the documentation you need. Other than a couple of meetings to decide on the winner of the RFP and so forth, which you're guiding them through, they're pretty much done, right? And I think it's a really big draw for customers to not have to put in the hundreds and hundreds of hours into these big contracts that you and your team do.
Yeah, where we've evolved some of our contracts, Patrick, in our statement of works, is that now every statement of work for Nuclo has become a project management statement of work. And so it's not just about negotiating a good price. It's staying involved for the entire term. It's staying involved for the term of their contract that we've helped them negotiate and doing the small things. I like to say to our sales teams, they're interested in saving you as our client money. The analytics team, the team that I'm in charge of, right? We're about saving you time, and the time save is far outweighs the cost save for many of these people that are actually having to do the day-to-day work. And realistically, our sales team has they've evolved too, right? They've got a great way of closing business with potential clients, and the way they actually do that is they just go to them and say, don't you just want to know if you've got a good contract or not? And realistically, all we ask is that you sign an NDA with us. You give us copies. Let us look at a few copies of your contracts. And then we're basically going to come back and tell you if you got a good deal or not. Everybody out there wants to know if they got a good deal, right? I mean, that's just, people's human nature. And so it makes it easy for us to be able to transition.
Well, and most of them have always suspected they weren't getting the best price, but they didn't know what to do about it, right? Even if they did the best they could, got multiple bids, they just knew, they had this feeling that they were getting taken to the cleaners, and in most cases, we know that's the case. I love being able to say, and I'll just close with this because we are up against our clock here, but I love being able to tell customers there's zero upfront or out-of-pocket cost. You don't have to switch vendors to save. In fact, many of our customers stay with their incumbent, even though we cut their price significantly. In many cases, we cut it in half. And I love the fact that we can say, and going forward, you will now have an expert on speed dial. You'll have an expert sitting on your side of the desk that you can call when you have a pricing question or a contract issue, or the vendor's not doing what they said they would. Or I've seen many examples when Mark picked up the phone to take care of a problem in minutes a client had been working on for months. Because number one, he's usually calling the CEO or the president of that company. He's not just calling a customer service person. And two, they do not want to lose Nuclo's business because although it's at a lower margin, it's significant. These vendors are being able to bid on multiple jobs. I'm a firm believer that one of the best ways to create certainty is to hire experts who do what they do, and they do it all the time. They do it better than you. They do it faster than you. They know the intricacies. They know the rules and the regulations and the shortcuts, and they can help guide you towards certainty. That's why we don't hire someone that's why we don't usually represent ourselves in court. We don't do our own taxes. We don't do our own sprinkler system in the backyard, right? We don't do surgery on ourselves. Nuclo is a great example of that kind of expert who can step in, make sure you don't die, make sure you don't mess it up, make sure you come out with an extraordinary outcome in the end. So, Mark, thanks for being here, my friend. We really appreciate you being here on Finding Certainty today.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. Appreciate it, and certainly love the opportunity to continue to work with your team. You guys have helped us do some great business over the years.
Well, we know that if we send you a lead, that you'll take care of them. So, thanks, my friend. Thanks for being here. Have a great weekend, everybody. Certainty's out there. You can find it, and we can help. We wish you the very best, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.